Jamie Fuller.
Hello.
Hi, thank you for doing this.
I'm thrilled to be here. This is great.
This is my third show. I don't really know what I'm doing. So we're just going to talk, and then you're going to be brilliant, and it's going to be awesome.
No pressure. Got it. Great.
So, first of all, tell everyone where you're talking to us from.
I'm in Minneapolis. Welcome to my apartment.
It's lovely. Looks lovely.
Yeah,
so we've done a bunch of projects together at Minnesota Opera.
Yep.
And do you remember what was our first thing that we did together? Was it
Magic Flute?
Magic Flute?
Yeah, that was my first season. So
oh my gosh,
that was it.
For some reason I was thinking it was Elixir of Love, but no, you're right, it was Magic Flute. And that was maybe the most tech heavy product. I mean, for it to be your first season.
That was my second show with Minnesota Opera, and it was being thrown into the fire for sure.
I mean, it was this Barry Kosky production that's all animated videos.
Yeah.
And we had to have the videos from the first day of rehearsal. So you basically had to set up as though we were in Tech Week from the first day. Is that right?
Yeah, we had the entire wall in the room. We had the whole projection system. It was bonkers. We had to have crew in the room with us because we had to clip you all into harnesses and flip you out onto the wall. And yeah, bonkers.
This is great. Okay, this is a great start to this because I wanted to ask you, because I mean, we can't have a good show without a good stage manager, and you are a very good stage manager. And so, but I would venture to say that there's probably a lot of people out there who don't really know what a stage manager does. Could you just give us the Cliff's Notes version of what does a stage manager do?
Sure. That depends on if you're talking about the person in the front of the room who calls the show or the assistant stage manager. But we're generally in charge of everything that happens in the rehearsal room and on stage. So in opera, especially if it's happening on stage, if somebody's walking on stage, one of us is calling it. So whether that's the ASMs who are backstage queuing in all the performers and making sure the crew's doing everything they're supposed to be doing, so the right prop goes on stage, the right scenic piece is moving, or the person at the console calling all the light cues, calling all of the things to fly in and out, and we're watching safety constantly. So if somebody isn't where they're supposed to be and something's flying in, we have an eye on that to make sure nobody gets hurt.
So you do everything, is what you're saying.
We facilitate people doing everything. I get to facilitate playing pretend constantly. It's kind of great.
That's awesome. So I'm just going to run down a few things that I do in a rehearsal day, and I want you to tell me if a stage manager or assistant stage manager had anything to do with that. Okay, great. So I show up for rehearsal. I get a cup of coffee. Who made the coffee?
We definitely made the coffee.
Okay. Yeah, I grab a nicely sharpened pencil from the rehearsal table. Who sharpened that?
Yep, we've sharpened it. We've also checked to make sure it has an eraser because that's the worst thing.
So then I go and put my rehearsal shoes on so I can rehearse. Now, they came from the costume shop, but then who organized them in the rehearsal room?
Yep, we definitely work with the costume shop to make sure that we have all the rehearsal pieces that we need and that they're as close to the real items as possible. And then we're ferrying them back and forth if they need repairs or cleaning or anything like that.
Then I grab my prop from the prop table, which was set up by?
Definitely us. We've set that out top of the day where it needs to be in the room, but also for instance, the bag that's behind you from a show that we've done together. If there are specific ways that you want it set up as the performer, we've laid out the barber's kit and put your comb here and your scissors here and rolled it just like this. So when you reach into your bag, you know exactly what you're pulling out.
That's a good point because this is a prop of mine from Silent Night, which we've done together, and there's a scene where I have to cut someone's hair and I have to take out my barber kit, and there's a span of a measure and a half where I have to open it, take this stuff out, and then be cutting. And if it's not in the right order, or if it's somehow not rolled up the right way, first of all, I start to panic. And second of all, it can cause a whole chain of things to happen late. So it's just something so ridiculously small as making sure the scissors is in the right place in a bag.
Yeah,
it's huge if it's not done, and we count on you guys to do that kind of stuff constantly.
Because there's so many other things to think about as you're singing at the same time. It's
right.
Bonkers. It's bonkers.
Okay, so now I've got my prop. Now I'm standing on the side of the stage and I'm waiting to make my entrance, which happens on beat 3 of measure 75. Now, who tells me when I should walk out on stage?
That's definitely an ASM. And 2 minutes before that, we've checked to make sure you were there, that you had the right prop in your hand, that you were wearing the right thing. And around.
Are sometimes singers not in the right place?
It happens every once in a while. I mean, there are other things to watch. But you said what, measure 75? So somewhere in 73, if I'm ASMing, I put my hand up and said, stand by Andy, made eye contact with you, made sure you're paying attention, made sure everything's okay, and then drop my hand on the right beat and say, go.
So then when I walk out on stage, there's all these lines of tape that look just like the kind of like outlines of what the set would look like. Now, how did those get there?
Magic. No, we spend lots of time measuring ground plans and talking and thinking about what color everything should be on the set, and then taping it out. That's part of prep week.
And then rehearsal's done, and I check my daily schedule for tomorrow. And who posted that?
Yeah, probably somebody in stage management or somebody in the scheduling department, but we're definitely part of the conversation about what's next, what we're doing the next day.
So there's a recurring theme here.
A little bit.
So can you talk a little bit about, well, first of all, you do a lot of work in not just opera, but like straight theater, ballet. Mm-hmm. Do you have a musical background? Do you have to be able to read music to do opera stage management?
I have a little bit of a musical background. I was a drummer growing up, and because I was the only girl on drum line, I had to play bells, which is not the same thing. So my parents put me in piano lessons, which I hated, but which I am so grateful for because it's the only reason I have this job.
I'm going to play that clip for my kids after this interview's done.
Absolutely. Seriously. Was not a fan, but I couldn't do this without it. But I will say, when people ask me if I have to read music, I usually say no, which sounds contrary, but I need to be able to follow music. So I don't care what note you're singing. I don't care what key we're in, or even being able to look on the page and say, oh, it's going to sound something like this. I just need to be able to know where we are in the score.
Right. So. Because, I mean, everything happens. I guess this leads me to my next question, like differences between like straight theater, opera. Obviously, the opera has a musical, everything happens according to a musical cue.
Yeah.
So it can't just be like, well, an actor walks out and on this line I do this. Well, the actor might say that line or might not, but there's also an entire symphony orchestra playing, and everything has to go according to the score, right? I mean,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. We've been doing a lot of pre-shows this season, and it's funny when we get into building those and everyone has to take the step back and be like, right, no music. Okay, what order is all of this happening?
For what shows?
We've been doing a lot of pre-shows. So for both Electra and Flight this season, they had pre-shows before the music started. So
right.
As the audience was coming in, there were things happening on stage. And the conversations were just hilarious because it's not, oh, well, this happens on this bar.
On measure 4, it's like,
right,
yeah.
Let's talk about the order and how this is going to happen. And yeah.
So you had to be the composer in that situation.
A little bit. It was a lot about timekeeping. So it was at 10 minutes this is happening versus on this measure.
Sure.
So,
oh, that's really cool. So I'm a singer.
Oh.
You probably didn't realize that in all the years we worked together. I get that a lot. What would you say is uniquely challenging or uniquely rewarding about working with singers?
So it's funny. I've been doing master classes with stage management students since the world went weird.
Right.
And so many of them ask me the diva question. And it's so much fun to get to honestly tell them that that's not my experience.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah, it's so interesting that that's what the stereotype is, because my experience of working with singers has been that y'all are the most passionate, kind, excited group of people I've ever been in a rehearsal room with. And
I'm gonna write this down here. Hold on a sec. Passionate, kind.
Oh, it's great though, because giving is also a word I keep writing down. Because so much of my job as an opera stage manager has to do with singers trusting me to know what's going on. And
right.
So there's something so rewarding about working with a great group of people who also get to the point of us trusting each other to both do our jobs well.
Well, that
And
definitely goes both ways. I mean, like having that level of trust is super important for us too. And just from my experience working with you and a lot of the team at Minnesota Opera, it's just like you walk into that situation and it's just, oh, this is going to be okay. I'm going to be well taken care of. And then once you have that feeling of security, then you can actually do the thing you're there to do, you know?
exactly. Exactly. And that does go both ways, because I trust that you're going to tell me if something isn't safe or if something's uncomfortable or if you're just not happy about something, so I can help. And that's incredible.
Awesome. So you've talked about the rewards. Anything challenging about singers? You can be honest. I can
So I
edit this
don't,
out if it's especially embarrassing to
oh, good,
myself.
great. So if I just like hold up a picture of you, man, I should have done it. Um, I don't have an opera background. I saw my first opera when I was 27. So I think my biggest challenge is just trying to make up for lost time. I mean, I only speak English. I'm secretly doing Italian lessons right now on Duolingo.
Awesome.
Um,
What was your first opera that you saw at age 27?
Florencia.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, and that was when I was in grad school.
Yeah.
It's not something I grew up with. So yeah,
So how did you even get into it? I mean, if you don't have a background, like what drew you to it in the first place?
so I went and got my MFA in stage management at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. And part of their program is that everyone walks out with experience in theater, opera, and dance.
Okay.
And so my last year there was my opera year, and I walked in terrified, and I walked out just completely gobsmacked in love with it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean the voices and the orchestra and getting to call off of something that had rhythm, which was great because I love rhythm, and the scale and just everything. It's incredible. I just don't have a background in it, so I can't dig deep when somebody's talking about an opera that everyone should know, that I'm sitting there going, I should probably look that up.
That's so cool. So we've uh we've talked, I guess, a little bit about this just previously, but I'm asking this to everybody because I sort of feel like even for someone who's been in the business for a long time, I think of a stage manager as doing a certain set of jobs, but there's probably a lot about your job that I just don't know about. And I guess what I would ask you, is there anything that you wish singers showed up understanding or knowing about what it is you do?
Yeah, absolutely. My main job is to take care of you. And if I feel like if more singers understood that in a healthy way, in a we can be teammates or yeah, team members kind of way, that it would be better for both of us. And if you're unhappy about something, I desperately want to know that. Don't get me wrong, calling cues is so much fun. I love that part of my job. But the best part of my job is getting to take care of people. And so if you feel unsafe, either physically or mentally or emotionally about anything, if you're uncomfortable, if you just feel kind of weird about something and you don't know why, I would love it if you talk to me about that. Because especially if I'm ASMing, as I'm standing on the side of the room hanging out with people, waiting to cue people in, I'm paying attention to energy. I'm paying attention to how people are talking to me and responding to things, because I'm always on the lookout as to how I can make your job easier.
Well, that is very much appreciated, for sure. Speaking for
It's,
myself.
it's the job and it's what I love about it. So
Um, we've talked a little bit about this too, but could you talk about a little bit more about the prep that goes into stage managing an opera, like the weeks and months before any of the singers show up to start rehearsing, you're doing prep work. And then I like to follow that up with, like, once we've staged it, how does your role change once we get into the theater?
sure. So prep, like you said, months and years, depending on the show. We definitely have a chunk of time right before a show starts. Definitely. We hopefully have a chunk of time right before a show starts that we dig into it and prep it. And so that includes putting paperwork together, taking all information from the score and libretto, taking notes on what we might need in the room, what the set's going to be, measuring out the ground plan. Uh, it's different if it's a remount, because if we're if we're remounting somebody else's work, the expectation is that stage managers walk into the room knowing the show cold. And so no matter where we start, we better be handing off the right props, handing off the right costume pieces, and ready to call any cue accurately the very first day.
That's like what singers, we're
absolutely
expected to have the score memorized on the first day. I've never once thought like, oh, the stage manager's got to have this score basically memorized, just like a singer does.
Yep, we have everything in our book, and so we're expected to be able to turn to whatever page we're on and jump into it. Wow. Which is great and terrifying all at the same time. It means that the room works in a fast fashion and we can keep up with y'all. But it's a lot of prep work. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then so we've staged the whole show and everything works great in the room. We do our final room run and everyone's hugging and so happy. And now we move into the theater. Now what changes for you when we move into the theater?
It becomes a lot about teaching the crew how to do the show, especially if you're working in a union house. Personally, I'm not allowed to touch props or costume pieces or set pieces once we move into the theater. And so I'm teaching a whole new group of people how to do a show in usually less than 24 hours before the cast gets there and expects things to run smoothly again.
And we've had like 3 weeks probably of staging. So we've learned that over a span of several weeks, and now you're teaching it to an entirely new group of people who probably don't know the score in a day.
Absolutely. Yeah. Which, I mean, that's why we do paperwork, and that's why we work with amazing union crews who can pick that up and run with it and never look back.
One thing that I find
answering a lot of questions.
What's that?
I said we answer a lot of questions constantly about, well, what is the prop and what's going on in the story, because they want to know, which is kind of cool.
Well, that is cool. I mean, I always, this is one frustration I have with myself and other singers in this situation, is that just the fact that we've been rehearsing this show doesn't mean that everyone else in the world has been rehearsing this show. And the crew desperately, my experience with them is that they want to collaborate, they want to contribute, they want to bring their best self forward and elevate the art just like we do. But this is their first day of rehearsal, and like reminding myself of that on the first day of tech is so important, just for my own mental health, but also just, like give them a chance to do their job, and I frustrations can run so high in tech week anyway. And it's just, I always find that to be a challenge to remind myself, like, hey, we did our thing, they're doing their thing, and then we could put the things together in a couple days and hopefully have a really nice thing to share with people.
Well, and that's something I have to remind myself when I'm calling a show, is because we get into a tech process and I am so hard on myself if I call cues incorrectly that I've only gotten to call once. I have to constantly take a step back and be like, it's fine, that's why we're here, it's rehearsal, and then get back into it.
Can you talk a little bit about calling cues and for people who might not know what that even means?
Yeah, absolutely. So as a stage manager, if the lights change, if something flies in and out, if a set piece is moving on and off, if there's a sound cue, if there's a video changing, if the turntable's moving, those are all things that I've probably called, or somebody on my staff has definitely called. So nothing besides performers move on a stage without a stage manager calling it.
So when you call a cue, you're looking at the score, and on your score, there's a Post-it note or some sort of note that says, on this measure, light cue number 75 happens, sound cue happens, singer walks on stage. It might be 5 different things happen at that exact same time. So at that moment in the score, what are you doing? You're on the microphone telling different people to do stuff?
Yep, I'm on my headset. I have a bunch of buttons pressed so different people all over the theater can hear me. And I'm saying light 75, rail 2, spot 1, and sound 4, go. Hopefully quicker than that, because that's a lot of words to get out of my mouth and get the go on the right beat.
That's so cool. I love talking about this sort of going in the weeds with this sort of behind the scenes stuff. So I really appreciate this. I know that people are going to be super interested in this. That's great.
Real quick, I will say it's a good time. And if you ever get the chance to shadow a stage manager or ask if you can shadow somebody, please do. We love to show people what we do.
Cool. I want to do that. Could I do that?
Absolutely. Seriously, my parents didn't understand what I did until I got to pull them into a booth with me. So
that's so awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, I have before we wrap up here, I'm doing this with everybody. It's called the Fauci 5.
Right.
Quick little questionnaire of kind of what we're doing, how we're all doing during the quarantine. So, well, first of all, first question. Do you have a favorite opera, or maybe an opera you think is underrated?
I have a favorite opera, and I'm not saying it just because I'm talking to you, but Silent Night is my favorite opera. Hands down. Hands down.
I love it too. I have no objectivity about it. It's just like, I love it so much. I love everything about it.
Yeah. I wish that I would have been there to build it. Yeah.
I sometimes forget that you weren't. Like, we've done so many shows together now. I sometimes just put you back in time into earlier shows.
I would have loved that. It's such a good show. It's such a good show.
Awesome. Do you have a favorite book or maybe a movie about, or any kind of resource about opera that you could recommend or that you like to share?
So I went off the rails a little bit because you did send me the Fauci 5, and I appreciate that. I went for music in general, and I went the podcast route. So the podcast Song Exploder by Hrishikesh Hirway is amazing. He breaks down a song. He talks to the artist who wrote it. It's everything from pop music to Yo-Yo Ma. It's so good.
Oh, that sounds great. I have to check that out. Song Exploder.
Song Exploder.
Okay, sweet. Any book that you've read recently that you'd like to share?
The Alice Network by Kate Quinn. It's about a female spy ring in World War I. It's great.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things I've read in the past probably 10 years at this point.
Historical fiction or nonfiction?
Historical fiction.
Nice.
Yeah.
So we're all canceled right now. So what are you doing to stay sane?
I'm Zoom managing events, and it's wild. So there is an open mic night that happens once a week called Pandemic, because of course that's what it's called, that I'm getting to Zoom manage. And then I'm helping out with some other virtual shows. I just did a comedy show for a duo in Chicago a couple nights ago. It's very strange. But
how do you stage manager over Zoom? Like, how does that even work?
I know. For the open mic night, it's a lot about spotlighting the right screen at the right time. So the performer is the one on screen. For the comedy show, is a lot about playing videos at the right time, or sound effects, or putting photos up, screen sharing, those kind of things. It's a little wild. My parents are part of Southeastern Guide Dogs. It's a whole different thing, but they do puppy raising meetings over Zoom right now, and we're in talks for me to help them just like manage muting and letting people in, and it's all very strange.
Oh, I mean, the learning curve for all of us during this time, like, we're all becoming experts, or well, amateur experts in lighting,
right?
Sound, like getting the right microphone set up, camera set up, like software. I mean, it's insane.
I can't imagine what you're going through to do all of these great videos you're doing. Like, it's bonkers.
It's fun. I'm having a good time. Final Fauci 5 question. What are you watching on Netflix right now? Or whatever, streaming?
The West Wing. I'm usually watching The West Wing. It's on a constant loop.
Awesome. You're the second person to be watching The West Wing on the Wilkowske or Wilkowske interview series. So that's great. Good company. Actually, it was Crystal who I was talking to, and she's watching it too. So
that sounds
you
right.
guys can like catch up with each other and see where each other is.
I should just text her the episode I'm on and see if she responds.
Oh, totally. Is there anything else that you'd like to? Any other projects you want to talk about?
Not that I can think of. Again, okay. We're all kind of canceled. So
I know. Well, I can't thank you enough for doing this. This is so good. Such good info. I love this behind the scenes stuff, and I adore you. You're one of my favorites. I can't wait till we can all do this again sometime.
Absolutely. It's great
Yeah.
to talk to you for a while.
Totally. Okay.
Cool.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you. Have a good day, Andy.
Yeah.